Hi guys. Today we are going to talk about the scale and proportion. This actually a design principle. So we learn about a design principle called unity. Now we are going to learn about the proportion and scale. When we talk about a design principle, what do you get? Like we previous like 2 lectures we learn about design elements like line and shape. So when we learn about design elements and when we learn about we are going to learn about design principles, what are the differences we have? Anyone can just have any answer for that? What's the difference between the element and the principle? Just give your opinion. That's totally fine. So design element is something like we can talk about it individually, like the lines, the shape, we can talk about it separate. But in a principle, it's all about the composition. We have to talk about it looking at the total design itself. So when we talk about unity, we said about continuation, repetition. So we cannot say repetition by looking at one element, but lines we can say the vertical lines, horizontal lines, but the effect will change when we apply it to the design itself. So today this is also a principle, design principle. So look at this 2 images. You can see 2 bikes, but in different sizes. What can you say about these 2 bicycles? Just only looking at it at the size of it. What you can say? Just simply say this is bigger than the one that is over there. So big and small. But if we have this bike without that one, we can only say that's a bike. We cannot say it's bigger or smaller because there is nothing to compare it. So scale and proportion is all about comparing. We by itself, but even though we have one thing, let's imagine we have a actual bike here in actual size, then this might be smaller than that one. But when we look at this one and someone asks you, this is the actual scale of the bike, but then in your mind, you will read that as like you will see, okay, actual bike is this length, or this is smaller than that one. So you say this is the scale of this bike is small. So when we talk about scale, we talk about elements within the same category. Like when bike, I did not say anything about rather a car or anything, any other thing. Like when we talk about the bike, we talk about bike itself. And the actual bike and compare it with the one that we have in the composition. So keep in mind the scale is about when we are talking about the same category, and proportion is about, let's imagine you have this tire, let's say very big tire according to this bike. So within that one, we can say, oh, this tire is not proportionate to that bike. When we compare about 2 elements within the same object, we are talking about proportion. I think you guys understand what I say. So we will see in the following examples. Okay, let's go to here. Okay, this one. So can you see the bow? So it's what you can say about it when you compare the whole picture. Is it the right size for the head? No. So if the bow is bigger than the person there, what you can say? Is it about a scale or the proportion? The one that I explained you before, like how to compare it, like the simple thing, the bow is connected to her, but it's not like comparing two persons. We are two bows. We are comparing the bow against the person, the human being. So what we are talking about? Proportion or scale? Yes. Yeah, proportion. That's right. So it's not proportionately correct. It's bigger. But if we have an actual bow here, let's say it's something like this size. When we compare that bow against this one, what you can say? The scale of the bow is bigger than the actual bow. So this is the difference between the. So, but there is another thing about this one. When you look at this, where your eyes goes? Definitely to the bow or to the person? To the person. Why? Can you explain me why? Right, but your eyes directed in, yeah.
Yeah, I would say your eyes, her makeup really dark around her eyes, and then the white of her eyes too. So it just that's where you look at. It stands out the most.
Right. Okay. So don't you see about the whole thing itself with the bow, because of the size of the bow, the scale of it? Don't you guys goes into that one, or just because of you are more person like? But when you are looking at the picture, didn't anyone directed to the whole thing itself and focus on the bow itself? No. Okay, that means it never gives the idea of, because sometimes this, if we change the scale of the element, it will focus you into that one. So here it's not properly because of the fashion, I think, because sometimes we change the scale of certain elements, not in the actual scale, but we will make it bigger or make it smaller to get your attention into it. Okay, let's think about this one. Oh, this is just a video. You can go through it. I am not running this video here. It's about a 1 meter. It's talking about a 1 meter diameter circle, and they will multiply it by 10 times, and that will be compared it to the size of the world, and it will go on and on to the universe. And also it will reduce by dividing it by 10 times, and make it smaller and go right into the atom. So it's just like explaining you about the scale. So here's another example. Here I want to know about now. Can you see the people here and the person there? So if I'm asking you this person, about this person, is he according can you say about like according to this composition, the person scale or the proportion is comparing to the people here? Is it about proportion or the scale? I'm asking you, comparing to the people here. It's scale. Scale, right? But let's imagine we don't have these people here, but we have this building and the person. So then what you're going to say about scale or the proportion of the whole image? Just imagine that people are not there. Then we talk about the proportion. You know why? Because we compare it with this element. It's like two objects. Because when we see, oh, this building should be bigger than the person scale. So it's like proportion. This person is not proportionately correct here. But see, in the image, they have enlarged the person's scale, because in our mind, we read that person's scale is according to the size of this one. So we say like, this is a, let's say this is a 2-storied, 1.5 storied height. 1.5 storied means we imagine like 10 foot is the certain height of a building. So it's like 1.5. So so we compare it like that person should be in this size. So we say the scale is bigger, but when we compare it to the building, the proportion is not correct. But they actually made it larger. It's like, you know how the visual illusion, so to get the attention of your eyes into that part of it. This is also another example. Can you see, when you look at this one, what you get into mind, like, don't you get like it's a table lamp? But when you see it here, it's like proportionately, it's not looking like not right. Like, see, you compare it with this whole context, and when you think about the scale of it, you see it's bigger. According to the actual size of a table lamp, you see this one is bigger here. But when you compare it this one, oh, we see, oh, okay, this is proportionately bigger into this composition. See here, what I talked about before, the principle of making like the previous one, that the person is scaled bigger. See here, this Lady Madonna and the Jesus Christ shows in a bigger scale. Why? What I said before, to get the attention of you. See, all the other human beings here shows in like in the scale is according to the picture, but this one, they have made this one bigger to get your attention into it. So we call it like this hieratic scaling, to make it bigger, to get your attention and show the emphasis of it, focusing into that part. So then, you know, making a element large, and also it's important, it's also giving attraction when you make it smaller than the actual size. But then please remember, when you are making some elements smaller than the actual size in your composition, try to detail it out. Otherwise you cannot, because when you make it smaller, you cannot see sometimes. So you can see it. I will show you some examples of it. See here. This is this area is in the Science Museum at Oklahoma State University, Oklahoma City. This is kind of a giving you a visual illusion. There are some elements with bigger sizes, and you can play with it. See here, these children. So when you see this one, you can see this table and chair is rather bigger for these children. So when you compare it to these children and the tables, what you see, like, is it proportion that we are talking about, or the scale? Anyone can say, when comparing these tables, chairs, and against the children? No, it's not, because we are comparing two different objects. You said about scale, if you think about the actual size of the table and this table, the size of this table. So the same, like I said about when you are comparing the two bikes and when you are comparing two human beings in the image, that scale. Proportion is coming when you are comparing two different objects in a composition. So here we are talking about proportion. But if I ask you the size of the table, is it with the proportion? No. then you are correct about the scaling. It's big, it's in a bigger scale. But this is when you are doing something like this, your eyes will attract into this different scaling. So that's why I said when in your composition, when you make something very large, your attention and your focus will be on that one. So you can use that different scaling of natural elements to give some focal point in your design. This is what I talked about when you are making it smaller. You can also make things smaller in scale. This one is done by using pencils. It's done by this is a miniature pencil lead sculptures done by Salawat Fide. You can search it in the web. See how much detail he has given it to it. That will also focus your mind into certain designs. If you have small elements, just try to detail it out. So you can get the attraction into that part as well. And the other important thing is about the context. When you are doing your designs using this scale and proportion, think about the background as well. Because context is also important, because when someone looking at a composition, the person is not looking at the element itself. He will also focus what is happening around it. So that's why here this is a hummingbird done by on the earth, done by, I forgot the name, Andrew Goldsworthy. It's an English. He's an English sculptor. You can only see this when you are looking at from above in aeroplane or something, because in the ground level you cannot see the scale of it or anything. So see, the context is also important when you are comparing the scale and looking at a composition. So when you are doing your design, these are some important tips like to use when you are manipulating the scales, using the actual scales in your composition, and also changing the scale of it. That's keep in mind what will be the differences when you are doing the scaling, and where you are going to put those enlarged scales. Like if you can make it in the center, or if you want to get the people's attention into this part of it, then you have to do something here. So different scaling and locate it in a different places in your composition is also important. And also that I talked about, think about the context as well, what you are going to have as the background. So this is, we call it this is called hyper-realistic sculpture done by Ron Mueck, Australian sculptor. He's an Australian sculptor. You see, this is like this realistic sculpture that we talked about in the previous lecture about the naturalism. So it's like creating the actual 3D actual figure in 3D mode. Like, but the difference is when you are looking at it, it's like in the only where you are. If you are looking at this one, you see it as it's in the actual scale. But look at this image here. It's actually very big in scale. But you get into know the scale of it when you look at this picture, because then you are comparing these two. So as we learn what we see here now, it's about the proportion or the scale that we are talking about. Anyone can say now? We are comparing this human being with the one that is with the sculpture with the human being here. So what we are talking? Scale. Yes, right. So because we are talking about the same category. This is also another artwork by the same sculpture. So here, what we can do to show certain things, like we saw in the previous one, the two bikes with a bigger one and the smaller one. So here we are talking about when we want to talk about certain elements, when you talk about a square or rectangle, we cannot say this is the actual size, because there is no norm for the actual size of a square or rectangle. But if we want to convey them that this rectangle is smaller or bigger, what we can do is we need to have certain collection of rectangles, or at least one, to compare it, to say, do you remember that we did the last project with 3 line thicknesses? So I ask you to do use 3 line thicknesses, but sometimes you use thinner one and then a little bit more thicker one. The other one is very thick. But if I have these 3 line thicknesses separately, I cannot say anything. When I look at your composition, then I realize, oh, this line thickness need to be thicker. Why? Because I compared the 3 line thicknesses. That's why I came up with that idea. So internal reference, like when you are comparing one rectangle with another, or the line thickness, so you need to have some reference point. So when you are doing your composition also, try to use that. This is the same thing. So this one we call surrealism. This is like, you know about certain natural elements, the actual scales. The human figure, you know the scale of it. And the butterfly, let's imagine the butterfly, you know the scale of that. When you have, but you are manipulating with the scales with different elements, like see here, this lady, when you see this butterfly wings, what do you say? Now we are talking about what? Scale or proportion? If we compare these two? Proportion, yes. So the butterfly wing should be smaller when we compare to the human being. But we are manipulating the scale, like we are enlarging the scale of the butterfly wing, and not try to make a dream-like situations. So that's what we call a surrealism. You can see from the example here. Change the scale here, but attach it to the back. So it's like because actual situation, you will not find actual situations like this. So that's what we call the surrealism. So these are some of the examples. See here, use the trees. I told you about the background. Background is also important. See here, the sky, it shows, and some tree, and like the tears coming out from the eyes, but it's like a reservoir change into like a different, trying to emphasize a different scenario here, but using different elements, not like just tears coming out from the eyes, but using the trees, the stream-like situations here. See here the trees. So that's what we call surrealism, like dreaming differently, but using the different scales of the natural elements. And the scale giving a different effect also when you are focusing on wide angle and focusing on a certain point. See here, when you are focusing on a wide angle, the spaces, how it fits to the space, and the scale of a person should be changed, and to emphasize the area and giving the correct message. In this image, you see there are people close together, and their scale is larger than this one because it's focused on like some thing like this area. So the scale, when you are doing your composition, this thinking about the paper or any material that you are doing your work, just think about your scale that you are using also when you need to focus on a certain area, or if you want to make it in a wide angle. See here. Here, this is like one, we are talking about one total composition, and the dress is exaggerated, the size of it, the scale. Why? To get your attention and to get your focus onto it. So as I said, you carefully use your scales when you are using certain elements, change it accordingly. So if you want to get your hierarchy or focal point into that one, use it accordingly. So this is some of the surrealism examples, because this one you will be doing another project on this for the project 4. So see here how the scales of the certain elements used in a different way, but something like a natural scenario, but using different elements into it in a dreamlike manner. See here the scale of the comb and the bed to get your emphasis and your focal point into this one. But here it's a lot of things have different scales. Your eyes will go here, there, and so that's why I said when you are changing your scales, please make sure to get the focus into that area if you want to get the viewer's focus. Otherwise, but you can also use the smaller elements as well, but try to do it accordingly to convey your message properly. These are some of the examples of the same thing. See here also the artist use these artworks can be found. These are just done by certain, I will give you some names. You can look into those examples in the web. There are some artists done these surrealism artworks. Salvador Dali, a Spanish artist. Max Ernst, German painter. Rene Magritte, Belgian painter, and John Miro, Spanish painter. So you look into the examples of it, because you will need this. You need to do another project. You will have to do a project on for the project 4. We are going to do something like this. And the other thing about the perfect proportion. So human body, the proportion, this human scale is the one that used for most of the elements to be created. Like we take it as according to this, I will show you here the canon of Vitruvius. Vitruvius is a architect, Greek architect. Oh no, yeah, Greek architect. He explained in his book like the human figure. If we take the human figure as the ideal template, and if we use that scale and create certain things, it will be a perfect scale. But that's why most of the time the chairs and the buildings we are comparing with the human scale. So it's a, but you can also make it different, and then the feeling and the effect will be different as well. I explained you before about the space inside a church. When you make the volume higher, you feel different rather than the normal height of a building. Building means a story, like 10 foot is the standard height we feel like normal inside in a room. But if we make the ceiling height higher, we feel like a different, it gives a different effect, like uh, a spirituality in a church that's make you smaller and the space look bigger. And the other thing about the golden rectangle and golden ratio and the Fibonacci numbers, this one I'm not going to explain it to you. I have posted certain videos in the Canvas. You go through it. That will explain how this is a mathematical theory. So it explains in the Canvas. So you go through and get an understanding of it. So I'm not going to go through these things. But you can find this golden ratio, golden mean, and these things in the natural elements, like this here. It shows this Nautilus shell, how the golden rectangle used, and how the design has been naturally created. These are natural elements. So what we can do is, in the natural elements, we are going to find these golden ratios and golden rectangles, how naturally it created. But the other thing is, when we do certain designs, we can use the golden ratio and this golden rectangle in our designs. See some of the logos that have been done using the golden ratio and these principles. This is the Apple logo. So these circles, you think just coming out of nowhere? No, this is something like when you have this one. So what he has done is, he take this part of it and make circles, and take this part and make the circle. So he have a collection of circles and use that to create this Apple logo. So these are some of the man-made things, the artworks, the composition, the logos that use the golden ratio and the golden rectangle. This is Parthenon. Use the proportion of the golden ratio. This is Notre Dame Cathedral. Also use the golden ratio principles. We can also find the same principles in the Leonardo da Vinci's The Mona Lisa painting. Some of the examples. iPod also has the same golden ratio principles applied into it. See, because it says like the golden ratio is like the golden proportion, but you no need to every time follow the same thing. Like it doesn't need to be the in the same exact golden ratio that you are going to do in your project work or in the future, but it will give also a certain proportions when you are doing your some design work. You can just like using it. So this one is a little different. See, the one that this is the Barcelona chair done by architect Mies van der Rohe. See the proportion of it. He used the cube, actually, the 5-part cube. So this length and the height and the width of the chair is the same. So that's how he used the principle of proportion to make it more aesthetically pleasing. This is also some of the examples using. So you can use the geometrical shapes in a way like the, that's why I ask you sometimes, oh, when you have a composition, just to try to have it certain, just divide it like into 3 and have it 1/3 of it, the focal point, because some of these principles will enhance your design composition. So try to use these things in your design work. I'm not saying all the time go with these principles. Sometimes use your imagination also when you are doing your designs. It can be totally different, and that's also make your design more focused and more unique. So thanks guys, and do you have any questions? And I'm asking you just to be seated for a few minutes, because my professor Dr. Aditya Jayadas is here and he will just speak to you for a few minutes. Oh.
Until 9:20.